With me today on the Agents to Owners podcast is my honor to sit down with Jeremy Goodrich of Shine Insurance out of Bloomington, Indiana. Jeremy started Shine Insurance scratch with his wife McKenzie in 2013. Shine handles personal, commercial, and has a specialty market of commercial real estate. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Brad, it's awesome to be here. Really excited to chat with you, share a little bit about our 10-year journey with your listeners, and share as much information as I can about the successes we've had, the struggles we've had, and how we've built this agency.
Yeah, all right, let's get into it. That's exactly what we want to get into. So, why don't you tell us how you found the insurance business?
So I started my adult life as an elementary school teacher, a third and fourth grade teacher. I did that for 13 years, and I loved every minute of it. So I was enjoying teaching kids, all different subjects, and that was awesome. During that time, I met my now wife and business partner, Mackenzie, and she's a third generation insurance agent. So her grandpa started
Okay.
an agency, sold it to her dad. She was managing the agency at that point, and they ultimately sold to Acrisure. And
Okay.
so when they sold to Acrisure, she just didn't have, any equity in it. She didn't have any purpose in that particular agency and was ready to do something different. I was really ready to move on from being a teacher too. So in 2013, we started Shine Insurance with the goal of changing the way people feel about insurance. And we've really never changed that goal.
Okay. So, I think it's really interesting for a husband and wife to start an agency, work together. What is your day-to-day role with the agency?
So I think that's exactly right. Lots of insights around how to run a business with a spouse. But my day-to-day role with the agency is a few hats still. One of my goals is pushing myself out of having multiple hats. We have absolutely a team, and I'm growing out of positions one by one. Currently, I'm the primary producer for the commercial real estate insurance program we have, which is a national program. And I'm serving the role of like CEO and marketing director, and most of your listeners know exactly what I'm talking
And
about, right?
yes, sir.
Playing all those hats. I don't any longer do anything in the personal insurance side. Our entire personal insurance vertical is running on its own. As
Mm,
far as the commercial insurance side, I'm the producer for the commercial real estate program. We have multiple account managers and a VA team underneath
okay.
the entire system.
Okay. So, what is Mackenzie's role in the agency?
Mackenzie's role is really kind of CFO, so she's in charge of
Okay.
all the money. She when we first started, I was doing home and auto, and that was it. And she was doing commercial. Basically, it was just the two of us, right?
Yep.
And as we've grown, she's moved out of being on the front end. She's not doing sales anymore. She's not a producer anymore. She still has a couple of big accounts that she still retains, but for the most part, she's moved more into an administrative role as I've
Okay.
moved over into the commercial side, and now I'm working to myself into a more administrative role.
Okay. Give me some pros and cons of working with your spouse.
Yeah. Well, the pro is that you can always you can trust the person that you're working with,
Yeah,
right?
I
I
hope
think,
so.
yeah, I think from the beginning, we obviously have that deep relationship. We're both in it for the same reasons. We don't have to split equity between two different households, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
one household is taking the equity, and she's a pleasure to work with. So all
Yeah.
those are the pros. I think the cons is how it rolls over into your personal life.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who is constantly thinking about the business. There's not a time when I don't have something on my mind, some new plan, some new idea, some struggle that I'm working on. And it can be really hard to not talk about that. She is much more regimented in the way she wants to think about business. She has a much better work life balance than I do. And so we have to make sure that I'm not talking in the kitchen while we're eating about business stuff. And so
Yeah.
we've worked that out pretty well, but I would say that's one of the struggles.
Yeah. Um, back to the beginning, and you guys from a previous conversation, it sounds like I mean, I would view you as a very successful agency. You've grown rather quickly. You've built a strong agency. How did you guys grow your agency in the beginning?
So thank you. I mean, over the course of 10 years, we've built it up to a $6 million book of business. So that's not necessarily super fast growth. I try and say this as much as possible because I think a lot of the people speaking out publicly who own insurance agencies are telling these stories of, hey, I got to $6 million in 2
Yeah.
years, or, it's this like really exponentially fast growth. And when you dig into those agencies, most of the times they bought a book to start the agency, or they have a lot of money that came in. And so for your listeners who are in that boat, great. If you want to grow at that speed, awesome. But most of your listeners are probably like, man, it's really a struggle to grow my agency 20, 30% a year. And I think that's really the approach we took, which was let's grow 20, 30% a year, which is an amazing amount of growth, right?
Yes, it is.
But let's just do that consistently. We have never had any debt. We have not taken on debt. That may, some of your listeners may like that. Some of your listeners may think that wasn't very smart. But that's just been our approach, and we've never taken on other investors. So in a lot of ways, a $6 million book over the course of 10 years isn't really fast growth. It's just been consistent growth. Now, I didn't answer your question. It was about how we did that.
Yeah.
And so right at the beginning, I read a book by Jay Baer, who is one of my favorite authors. He's a marketing author, has a lot of wonderful books. And it was called Utility. And the basic premise was this: you have to decide who your ideal client is. And the more specific you can be about that person, the better. And then once you've decided who that person is, just do good stuff for them.
Yeah.
Do good things for that ideal client. It doesn't have to do with anything with your product, and certainly with insurance, which is not the sexiest product in the world, probably
No.
should have nothing to do with your product, right? It's just like go out and do good things for your ideal client. Put yourself in the center of that space. Make yourself a thought leader, a center of influence in their world. And then when they need insurance, they come to you. And that's how I've grown from the very beginning. I started that with first-time home buyers. So first-time home buyers was my first ideal client. And then it stayed in real estate the whole time. So it went from first-time home buyers to real estate investors, 1 to 4 unit real estate investors, and now it's commercial real estate investors. I have clients who have portfolios of 5, 6, 7,000 units.
Okay. Yeah. So you're quality over quantity, which, to build a book of your target client from the very beginning, that's way better than, having this, attrition come in, go out. I would gather to say I'm guessing your retention rate is very good because you've catered to that specific market.
Yeah, my retention rate is super high. My close ratio is above 70%. And I'm trying to get it higher than that. Because that means 30% of the people that got to me, that got to spend my time, weren't my ideal client, right? And so I'm trying to increase my close ratio from 70% to higher. And if you look at my lead funnel, it's not going to have as many leads in it as a lot of other people out there, because that close ratio is so high, because there's so many barriers to entry, and because I'm looking for my ideal client as opposed to anybody who walks in the door.
Yeah. When did you find the specialty market into the commercial real estate investor?
About 4 years ago. It really took off though when COVID started. So I started the commercial. Really, what happened, and I think a lot of your listeners will probably recognize this, is I had someone come to me who was in my local area here in Bloomington, Indiana, and say, "Hey, I've got some commercial real estate. Can you insure it?" And I was like, "I don't know." At that point, I had not insured commercial real estate before. I didn't know what my markets really were, and I didn't, know appetite, all that kind of stuff. And so I went out and looked to see if I could insure it. And sure enough, I had multiple different markets that were interested in it. I enjoyed the conversation, and we were able to take care of that property. And that started to spin it in my head,
Yeah.
right? I was like, wow, I liked that. I like this guy a lot. I think he's going to enjoy our service team and all the things we do. Can I grow this? And so I grew that for a little while until I was like, wow, this is a market that I can really succeed in. And right at that same time, COVID hit. And I realized in that period a couple of things. One, our agency was built for being virtual. Everything was fine. Everybody went home from the office and nothing changed. So we don't have an office anymore. We would never went back to the office. Two, I realized that my target market, commercial real estate investors, were now going to be so much more open to having Zoom conversations, to signing documents over digital space, to not having me come out. Some of those handshaking things that were in the past a little bit heavier, now everyone was a little more used to a virtual engagement. And it was like, you know what, I can do a national program. So I started talking to my markets, and it's taken off.
How many states are you licensed in?
We're licensed in all 50. There might be a couple that we don't have an active
Okay.
license in right now. But the way we did it was when someone brought like an exposure to us, then we would get licensed in that state. And so we just grew out from there.
How are you marketing nationwide?
Yeah, so my marketing strategy is irrespective of where it comes from, right? So my strategy is a 1-2 punch of LinkedIn and a podcast. And so all of my marketing starts on LinkedIn. I have a really clear strategy that I'm also teaching other insurance agency owners how to do. And then I drive people. I don't ask them if they want to buy insurance from me, right? Like that never works in my experience. I asked them if they want to be a guest on my podcast. And so I have a podcast called Managing Commercial Real Estate Risk. It's all about making great decisions as an asset manager or an acquisitions manager of a commercial real estate program. And so it's all about risk. It's all about decisions and how we make smart decisions. And so I invite my ideal clients on. I connect with them on LinkedIn. I start to establish a relationship there. And then I invite them onto the show. I have a great 45-minute conversation with them on the show, showing the value there, and then putting that show out, having a high quality show, just like you're doing right now. And, really making sure those assets get out to social media and we start to connect ourselves and our brand, right? And so from there, then it's a matter of connecting further, whether that's through just a DM conversation on LinkedIn or converting over to phone calls or Zoom calls or conversations where we get into it. And that is my entire marketing strategy.
Yeah, I love that. Looking forward, what would you like to improve on for Shine in 2023?
Well, I think one is that that team map, right? I think that whether you use a traction model of business ownership or so many others, they talk about mapping out your team and then filling the roles with the right person in the right seat. I think with an agency of 8 people and a VA team, we've got a lot of right people in a lot of right seats, but I'm still filling too many of them. And so it's how do we get more producers in the commercial real estate program, potentially other producers in other verticals. Anyone who focuses on commercial real estate will tell you a lot of companies don't love commercial real estate. And so there needs to be a little bit more balance in my agency. Other types of risks that companies can latch onto needs to be added. And that's what the future looks like for us.
You mentioned you have a VA team. How are you utilizing your VAs?
So our VAs do most of the CSR work, I guess you would say. So the way we structure it is we don't have CSRs, we have VAs, and then we have account managers above the VAs, and then we have producers above the account managers. And I know those terms can mean different things in different size agencies. I'm hiring right now, and I can tell you the thing I'm hiring for is much more versatile than an account manager in a 100-person agency, right? But so the VAs do information plugging, they do endorsements. None of our VAs don't talk to our clients at all. So there's no front-facing VA activity, but there is a ton of underneath VA activity that is a part of our systems, a part of our standard operating procedures, and a part of our workflows.
How many VAs do you have?
So it's one. We use Marblebox, and so it's one. You never know exactly how many individuals are a part of it.
Okay.
It might be one person. It's 40 hours a week.
Yep.
And, I think that would be somewhere between 60 and 80 hours a week of an employee if we hired them.
Okay. Okay. Looking back to when you were growing your agency, what kind of mistakes did you make along the way that when you look back, you say, I wish I would have done that differently?
So I think one of the big things, I don't know if it's a mistake or not. I relitigate every single decision over and over and over again as I move forward. So there's people out there who, and I think the right way to do it is you make a decision, you move forward with the decision, and then you get to the next, decision making point. And if that decision turned out it wasn't the best decision, then you can adjust from there. You can pivot from there. For me, I think I'm going back to that decision over and over again and be like, well, maybe that's the wrong decision, even as I'm moving forward. And I think that's just a part of my personality that
Yeah.
I'm working on. But, I think that's slowed down our progress. I
Mm.
don't think that not taking on any debt. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah.
I've made a ton of marketing mistakes, but none of them huge, and marketing's just tough, man. I mean, I think you never know exactly what's working until you have it. And with the LinkedIn podcast connection, that's definitely worked. But that wasn't a very specific answer, but I think the
No,
biggest mistake is a mindset thing.
yeah. But you mentioned marketing. We have to try different avenues of marketing, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and you don't know what's going to stick. What works for this agency might not work for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've, right now, I've been working hard at Google Ads,
Mhm.
and I've worked with marketing companies. I've had some success, and I know agencies that have success with it. I'm not seeing as big a
Mhm.
success. And for
Yeah.
me, one thing I examine is, where's that line of being patient with being dumb?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's is it a mistake? I don't know. Maybe,
Mhm.
but marketing is just something you have to try different avenues. So yeah,
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing there is, again, back to that ideal client. Who is your ideal client? The better you can speak to that person, no matter what journey you go on, Google Ads are going to work better if you're speaking specifically to a soccer mom in your town that just was thinking about buying a new car. If you're
yeah,
trying to sell local home and auto insurance, right? Or whatever. For me, it was a first time home buyer, right? How
yeah,
can I connect deeply with a first time home buyer in Indiana?
yeah,
So I started a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel really kind of blew up with this first time home buyer stuff,
mhm,
but I was getting leads from people. We just got a lead in today that was from New Mexico, right? I don't sell home and auto
yeah,
insurance in New
right,
Mexico. Like, so that is a strategy that worked. I mean, it had some positives, but didn't work because that's not a national program.
yeah,
I could apply that same strategy for my commercial real estate though, and that makes a ton of sense because I do offer insurance in New Mexico for, an apartment complex.
yeah. What do you find to be your biggest challenge as an agency owner?
Trusting other people. I think,
Yeah,
that's the hugest thing is, understanding that that success is who, not how. It's not learning how to do another thing yourself. It's figuring out how to find the right person who can
yeah,
do that for you. And, as small business owners, it's so hard because people want a lot of money to do it and you just don't have, the capacity to pay those big numbers. And at the same time, if you find someone who does fit into your budget, then they're not as good at it and you wasted a bunch of time. And there's a lot of feelings, I think, of I'll just do it myself.
yeah.
And I don't think that's how you grow a big business. Now
No,
that, there's people out there who are a husband and wife insurance agency that do it for 40 years and are happy with that. And that's great. I think
yeah.
that's awesome. But I think who, not how is a big thing I'm trying to learn and trying to grow my business based off of.
Correct. If you're gonna scale, you have to have a team.
Mhm.
And at some point you're going to have to trust somebody with a lot of the important aspects of the
Yeah.
growth or customer base or whatever it is. I think that's something I've struggled with myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And Brad, I think, standard operating procedures are so key to that. If you're listening to this show and you're doing this by yourself right now or struggling with finding other people to help you, my first question would be, do you have a system built, even if you're the one who does all 4 steps, that could be handed off to someone else? Step 1, step 2, step 3, our processes, our workflows are all based on a 4-step process. And those 4 steps are almost always done by different people. So step 1 is done by one person. Step 2 is done by the VA. Step 3 done by the account manager. And so the standard operating procedures have to be right. And what's great about that is then you can bring people into your system and trust them more quickly because you trust the system that sits underneath the work that they're doing.
How early in your agency did you guys adopt processes or write out processes? Or since McKenzie had a background, did you basically, when you start your agency, did you already have those in place before you got going?
No, we didn't at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I built pretty much all of our processes because I love McKenzie came from an agency style, which was you put people in a role and then they take care of that account and they pretty much take care of the whole account and they figure out their processes and maybe
Yeah.
someone trains them how to fill out an accord form or whatever, but they just figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to build an agency that was scalable and ultimately didn't need me anymore. And in that case, I've probably failed in some ways because we're 10 years in and I'm not there yet. But I'm a lot closer than I was at the beginning. So I started building those processes right away, mostly because I couldn't remember what to do from one
Yeah.
scenario to the next, and I needed that.
When you described that, the account manager taking that and kind of developing their own system, that sounds terrifying to me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, now it does because I've established processes and said, this is how we're going to do it. This is A, B, C. Not
Mhm.
that we were never like that before, but now that I look back to just have somebody kind of be rogue and say they're handling A through L, that sounds terrifying
Right.
of what's going on.
Do
So
you think about the amount of trust? We were just talking about trust, right?
yeah,
I mean, and that's how and I'm sure different agencies were different, even in the 60s or whatever period you want to talk about. But I mean, the amount of trust to just say, you know what, go do it. If you fail, then we'll fire you. If you do a good job,
yeah,
then we'll keep you around. Good luck. There's a lot of trust there, or I don't know, at least an ability to just cut ties if it doesn't work really fast.
yeah. Um, I mean, processes and standard operating procedures are key, and that's for especially for scratch agents. That comes up almost every podcast that I have in terms of something that you should be getting going sooner rather than later. What advice might you have for scratch or newer agents getting going?
Hmm. Well, one, I mean, you can take a look at ours. I'll, give a link at some point to share what we have.
Awesome.
I'm happy to share
Yeah.
ours. Is one. The other is, I think that you have to have basically a 4-step process. The way we've set up our systems is, first we obviously break it down into the different parts of the insurance policy life cycle. So there's prospecting, there's cancellation, that's the beginning and the end. But between that, there's endorsements, there's renewals, there's underwriting requests, there's billing issues. Each one of those is a piece of the life cycle of an insurance policy.
Yeah.
And in our agency, each one of those has a specific workflow. And then inside of that workflow, there's 4 phases. Phase 1, set the thing up. Say phase 2, do the thing. Phase 3, make sure the thing got done. And phase 4 is a bucket for just like if things went wrong with making sure the thing got done to make sure that gets put to bed, right? Um, and so every workflow has those 4 pieces, right? If we're talking about personal endorsements, you've got to set it up. You've got to do the thing. You got to make sure the thing that's done. And then you got a bucket for things that went wrong through that process. And that is way oversimplified,
Yep.
but
I
that
love the
essentially,
terminology. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then inside of that, then you get in the weeds of your agency management system and so it's inside of step 1, phase 1, there's maybe 8 steps and it's do this specific thing, then do this specific thing, then do this specific thing, then do that. And we check it off. It's just like, you talk about pilots having checklists. That's the metaphor we use inside of our agency. So now that we have those phases, now we're going to create the checklists, and everything has to be checked off before the phase is done. And as long as everyone's doing their job, then that works out really, really well. And it's pretty obvious when someone isn't doing their job because of our operations manager spot checks, as well as just seeing those checks on the workflow.
That was my next question. So you guys have a dedicated operations manager.
We do,
which is ideal. And so part of their job is spot checking. How often are they spot checking each employee or each VA?
So we have an every 2-week process. And it's really actually been great. So when our operations manager spot checks, they almost always find something. If they don't find anything, there's a celebration that comes with some monetary celebration as well. But they always find something. And then that's an opportunity to train. And what we've seen a ton is after a spot check, someone said, you know what? I never even knew that was supposed to be done that way. Or I never thought about doing it the way that you just showed. And so it gives our team members the opportunity to learn a process better than they learned it in training. Because when you're training, I mean, there's a lot coming at you.
Yes.
And then you're not training anymore. And now you start to create your own workarounds, your own crutches, your own things that help you get the thing done. And the spot checks really help us to say, hey, there's a better way to do this. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And so we've enjoyed. I don't know if everyone enjoys every spot check, but it
No, but it's a great coaching opportunity.
Yeah.
And I still will have random spot checking of phone calls just for coaching. And you can't do a lot, but just the random of it. And it's also an opportunity to say, hey, you know what, maybe we can explain it, this way. Because there's, in insurance, there are so many nuances.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way to, like I say, coaching and stay connected to, especially how you communicate it to your team.
Yeah.
It's a teaching moment. It's not necessarily a moment of being critical.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that balance is tough to do, right? Because no one likes to be fixed. No one likes to be pointed out that they did something wrong. But if you know from the very beginning, if you've set the expectations from the beginning, here's how it works. And there's an inclusive capacity of it. In our team meetings, everyone's involved, right? We're looking at our process as an agency, where we're headed, and everyone's involved in that conversation. And, if a team member just has no aspirations beyond what they're doing, they're probably not going to last here very long, because there's just an element of, hey, we're all in this together. And I think with that trust, back to the conversation of trust, right? Then someone can receive feedback knowing that it's not meant to hurt. It's not like you're going to lose your job. We just need you to step up this element of it. Or maybe a different way to say it is, hey, we notice you doing something. Is the way you're doing it better than the way we have it in the workflow? We certainly have times in the spot checks where it's like, that's actually better. Let's change the workflow. So we're capable of changing the standard operating procedures in that way.
It also gives you a chance to praise somebody's work.
Absolutely.
Especially and the team meeting is a perfect place to do that, to say, Maya took on a really tough phone call. She remained calm, and she absolutely just killed it on there. And I mean, you see their face light up, and actually you see the rest of the team's face kind of light up too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more you can celebrate, the better. And if you've got some monetary pieces to that, great. But I think just being able to say, like you just said, in a group setting, anytime we get feedback on someone, we talk about it in the group setting, if it's positive, obviously.
Yeah.
And that works out really well.
So you guys are 100% remote. What kind of tech are you using in your agency to enhance what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so tech stack at the top is so EasyLinks is the agency management system. Ring Central is the voice over IP. Dropbox is the storage system. And then our workflows are external of EasyLinks. I know EasyLinks wants you to put your workflows inside. We've never found their system to work for us. And so our workflows and standard operating procedures are in Trello, which is just a
Okay.
project management. There's lots of those out there. We've chosen Trello because it works pretty well for us. So I would say those are the top pieces of tech. Sign Now is our document signature app. If there's other things I'm missing, I'm happy to share, but that would be our basic tech
Okay.
stack.
Okay. And you have recently developed a program called the Shine program, which you were able to explain to me.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our listeners what the Shine program is all about?
Yeah. So it's called My Next Million in Insurance.
Okay.
And it's based on our Shine process, right? And so what I believe is that there are 6 key $1 million waypoints in the journey of an insurance agency owner. The first one being your first $1 million of written premium, right? That's the first one you hit. The second one is your first $1 million of annual new business. Then it moves on to your first $1 million of revenue, or not revenue, your first $1 million of gross revenue. Yep. And then your first $1 million of personal profit. And goes all the way up to your first $1 million of charitable giving. And so if you imagine, if you're listening to this show right now and you've just started your agency scratch, that first $1 million of written premium is a really big deal, right? That gets your feet underneath you. If you're in the place like me, where I've just gotten to my first $1 million of annual agency revenue, that feels really good, right?
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at in the journey. And there's people listening to this who may have 60, 70 employees who are looking for their first $1 million in charitable giving. And so no matter where you're at in your agency ownership journey, I believe you're on your way to one of those $1 million milestones. And what we're doing is just trying to compress the timeline between one milestone to the next. So we're trying to help insurance agency owners get to that next milestone more quickly.
So how specifically, I mean, a lot of my listening audience are newer agents. How might your program be able to assist those young agencies to get to that $1 million premium mark?
So what we're doing is really sprints. So you can engage in a variety of different sprints that we have. I'll give you 2 examples. So one is our LinkedIn challenge. It's the 10K in 10 days LinkedIn challenge. We're going to help you generate 10K of potential revenue or potential written premium inside your agency in a 10-day challenge. And we basically teach you my process for LinkedIn and exactly how I did it. So that's one example if you wanted to go out and find leads. Another example is access to our standard operating procedures and how to use those, right? You just said systems and workflows are things that new agents need. What if you could just have mine? They're not going to perfectly work for your agency because you may not be in EasyLinks, or you may not be in Dropbox, or you may not have the same tech stack as me. But most of what we do is convertible to other things, right?
Yeah, it's a guideline.
Why not work from a foundation there? So those are a couple of the pieces that we're doing right now. And we're just there's 3 parts of agency ownership, right? It's marketing, it's sales, and it's delivery. That's it. You got to go out and find people. Once you find them, you got to tell them about the value of the thing you have to offer them. And once they decide they want to be a part of your journey, then you got to take great care of them so they'll tell other people about you. And so all of our sprints are helping with one of those 3 things. Is it marketing? Is it sales? Or is it delivery?
Okay. And for the next level up, I would fall in that bucket of the million in revenue. How can you assist those agencies get to the next level?
Yeah, so some people, like all agency levels at all different, or agency owners at all different levels, are doing our LinkedIn challenges. So that that works for everyone. But we also have Masterminds, which is sits kind of behind the sprint. So if you want a deeper connection with agency owners that are at the same level as you, that are working towards the same milestone as you, right? Working towards having $1 million in annual revenue, then we're going to put groups of those folks together, diverse groups of agency owners who have different niches, are in different places, and just help them to mastermind together and grow together. So that's what sits sort of behind the sprints.
Okay. Sounds great. Um, Jeremy, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, ask you any questions, or find out more about your program, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure, I'm all over the socials. LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me, but shineinsurance.com is the place to start. And My Next Million in Insurance is a tab at the top of shineinsurance.com. So you can go to My Next Million and get some more information there.
Okay. Outstanding. Hey, I want to thank you for your time today. It was fun sitting down and chatting with you. And for everybody else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. And we'll see you next time. Jeremy, thanks much.
Brad, thank you so much.